Check 1 2. Check 1 2 2. Too much. Check 1 2. Get it?
Test, test, test. Hello, everybody. Just giving you the 5-minute warning here before we get started at 6 p.m. 5-minute warning.
Check, check.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amos Scott. I'm here this evening with my co-moderator, Megan Woolberg. This is the the Dene Nahjo Yellowknife Election Forum Part 2. And we're going to begin this evening with the Yellowknife's Dene First Nation Drummers.
Hello. I want to welcome everybody to the Illinois Forum here, and we're going to do a prayer song. And so as like yesterday, the prayer song was one of our elders from our community made a song and talking about the angels in the sky guiding us when we're walking on the land to make sure everybody's safe and make sure help each other when we're moving forward on the land here. Just want to say for everybody to have a good discussion and like even with us growing up, there's one elder that lived right up the hill from our house, and he was at the treaty signing in 1900. And he used to tell us a story about it because he was there. He saw it. He saw the discussion. He saw what was going on, and he remembers really clearly that the people who were there, the government people who were there, and our leaders, they said, they prosper together. The First Nation and non-First Nation people, they'll help each other and prosper together. So that's the main thing that I remember him telling us when we were little kids. So it's something to think about when you guys are moving forward with the government and moving forward with helping each other, helping our neighbors, and helping people in the communities. That's it.
Thank you, Yellowknives Dene's First Nations drummers, and also just like to acknowledge that we're on the Yellowknives territory, and thank you for letting us share this land with you. Once again, my name is Amos Scott. I'm a Clecho First Nation member and one of the founding members of Dene Nahjo. Tonight is the Yellowknife election forum hosted by Dene Nahjo, and this is my opportunity to explain to you a little bit why we have done this and a little bit about who we are as a group. So tonight's forum, hosted by Dene Nahjo, we began in 2013 as a response to the Idle No More movement. Dene Nahjo is currently led by the founding members who are listed on our website if you'd like to know more about us. Our website is denenahjo.com, and we are pleased also to introduce to everyone Iris Catholic, who is not here at the moment. Iris is one of our first staff members, sitting next, one of our first full-time staff members, I should clarify. And she recently started with us, moved to Yellowknife out of the community of Flutsuke, and is now here. And her role is to help us grow and connect with people throughout the NWT, so that as a group and as an organization, we can be more inclusive of our mandate. Dene Nahjo has a vision of advancing environmental justice for Northern peoples and promoting Indigenous leadership. We strive to foster emerging leaders, strengthen relationships, and create long-term positive change for the North. And that is one of the reasons why tonight we are hosting this election forum here in Yellowknife. Tonight will be a chance for people to get a good sense of the candidates here and how they think.
splitting it up in a different way, so you'll get through more questions tonight and hear from the candidates. But okay, that's a question for later. Okay, yeah, so you should be able to get the issues, a sense of the candidates' stance on the issues, regardless if they're not asked all of the same questions, and that's what we're hoping. And we're also hoping to have more time for audience questions later. So candidates are gonna have 1.5 minutes to respond, and our timekeeper, Mandy McDonald, is going to be using some colored paper, she's sitting in the front here, to indicate that time. So candidates, please pay attention to Mandy. The green card signals when you are to begin. The yellow card means that you have 30 seconds remaining, and the red card signals that it's time to stop, and we're going to cut you off if you continue speaking. So hopefully you will respect the timekeeper. And then around 7:15, 7:30, we're gonna take a quick break. And around 8 o'clock, we're gonna open it up for questions from the floor, as well as some questions that have been submitted through social media like Twitter and Facebook. People are sending in their questions, those who cannot be here tonight. And the event is being live streamed. We have Eugene Blanger working the setup over there. And so people can watch from their homes that cannot make it. People can also live tweet the event. We're using the hashtag ELXNWT, and they can follow the live tweeting on the Dene Nahjo Twitter as well. And I got a note to remind people, if you're parked in the federal parking lot across the street, you will get towed. So that's something that you should consider before you settle in for the night. Okay, so I guess we're gonna get started with the questions for this evening. Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, my bad. I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, okay, let's start with the opening statements from the candidates. And we're going to begin in Yellowknife North. So we will begin with Dan Wong.
Mandy, you can let me know? Oh, okay, good to go. Okay, thanks Megan, and thanks everyone for coming out tonight. I want to acknowledge that we are on Yellowknife's Dene territory, and thank Dene Nahjo for pulling this off. And just let everyone know why I'm running. I'm running because there's a lot at stake. Living here in the Northwest Territories, it's obvious to me that people are hurting. People are working hard, they're trying to provide for their families, but they're often falling behind. And people are suffering from mental health and addictions. Climate change. Climate change is real. It's not some far off threat. It's happening here and it's happening now. And I'm running to address these challenges. I believe we can address these challenges, and I look forward to sharing my platform with you over the questions tonight. They look like great questions. I think it'll be a great forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Banthine?
Thank you very much, and I too want to say hello to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this evening on the traditional territory of the Yellowknives Dene, and thank you to Dene Nahjo for hosting this evening. It's very important that we have this opportunity to speak about the important Indigenous issues that affect our territory. I'm a lifetime Yellowknifer. I've been born and raised here, and I've been living in the riding for 22 years. And I feel now that it's through my experience that I have behind me, I've reached a time in my life where I just want to contribute to the positive changes that we can work toward at the territorial level. I have a passion for helping others, and I believe I have the ability to improve lives. And so those are my reasons for running, and I look forward to answering questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Edwin Castillo.
Thank you, Mandy, and I'd like to thank also Dene Nahjo for this opportunity. I'm, again, Edwin Castillo. I wasn't born here, but I came here at a very young age. I've lived here in Yellowknife now for about 47 years. I came here with my mom quite young, along with 3 siblings, and being sponsored by my dad. I'm running primarily because of my family. My children who's encouraged me, and I've been in public service for a little while already, and I think it's now time to be a little more active in the decision end of things and make a difference. So I'm hoping that on the 23rd you'll vote for me appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Mind.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful evening. Thank you for Dene Nahjo hosting this. and for the drummers welcoming us here. I'd like to recognize that we are on Yellowknife's traditional land and territory, and that all of us here are gathered because we have a passion. Number one, I think there's an awakening and almost a renaissance that has taken place in awareness and political thought and leadership. And that's why I'm running. There is something in my family called don't complain, do something about it. And I got to the point where I was complaining way too much about the situation here in the north, about what I was seeing. And tonight,
Okay.
I'd like to be able to bring that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Sean Erasmus.
Hello, I'm Sean Erasmus. I've been living here all my life, still trying to get out. I'm trying to make some positive changes here. There's a lot of things that I don't really like that's happening here. A lot of people are addicted to drugs and everything. And 30 seconds already, okay? So anyways, that's why I put my name forward, and I will do my best to help some people. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Yellowknife Center, starting with Julie Green.
Thanks very much. Thank you for the invitation to participate and for hosting this forum. I'm looking forward to taking part in this. Downtown Yellowknife is my home. I've lived in this riding since I moved to Yellowknife 15 years ago, and it's a location of our family business. What I've seen in the last decade is that the Yellowknife downtown, which is the territorial capital, has really lost a lot of ground. We have an increased number of people who are homeless, and as a result of that, we've got an increased number of businesses that have moved out, and just a general malaise happening downtown. It's time for change. It's time for new ideas, and to come up with a comprehensive plan to address the problems downtown with all orders of government, with all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Robert Hawkins.
Hi, thanks everyone. I too wish to thank the organizers, Dene Nahjo, as well as the acknowledged one, Yellowknife's traditional territory. Folks, I couldn't be more excited to be here than this is such a great opportunity to be talking about these issues that affect our First Nation Aboriginal communities. And I think it's an important night that we spend a good focus on those particular issues. Frankly, I don't think they get enough attention, and that's why we're here. I mean, I'm going to be talking about cost of living, and I'm going to be talking about other types of challenges that we're facing, all people, including employment opportunities, more specifically to First Nations folks. So I think rather than spending a lot of time on those things, I just want to say how grateful I am here tonight to share this evening with you, and I look forward to the exciting questions. This is a huge opportunity, and I'd finally like to say is what took us so long to have this as a primary issue to be talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Yellowknife South, we'll start with Bob McLeod.
Thank you. I want to recognize that I'm here on Yellowknife Dene traditional territory. I was very pleased and honored to serve Yellowknife South for 8 years, and also to serve as Premier of Northwest Territories for 4 years. My reason for running is I want to make Yellowknife and the Northwest Territories as the best place to live, work, and invest. And I feel my experience, commitment, and leadership ability will allow me to do a good job. We've accomplished a lot, and I'm looking forward to accomplishing a lot more in the 18th Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Samuel Rowland.
Yes, good evening. My name is Sam Rowland, obviously. I like to thank the Dene Nahjo for bringing us here and the issues that face the Aboriginal. I am born in Iqaluit in Inuvik and raised there and living here for the past 12 years. One thing I hope to bring forward is the youth, and put the youth vote at the table and bring the Aboriginal youth forward. And one thing we do have is the cost of living that we hear from everybody in the territory, far and near. And that's, you know, I definitely want to put the youth voice at the table and get them heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Nijitsol Norbert.
Hello, and Drin Gwynzi. Thank you to Dene Nahjo for having this wonderful evening tonight. And thank you to the Dene drummers. My name is Nijitsol Norbert, and I was born and raised in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. I'm Gwich'ya Gwich'in First Nations with Russian-Irish background. I come from a long political legacy in my family of chiefs and public service. And I grew up inspired and strengthened by the land and the culture and the artists and activists and environmentalists that serve to protect it. As a nationally recognized contemporary artist, I've used this platform to investigate important issues of colonization, trauma, reconciliation in residential school, and how education and art can heal our country.
Thank you, Nijitsul. For Tunede Willade, we'll start with Tom Bolio.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. I am currently representative MLA for Tunede. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the riding that has been combined with Willade. I hope to represent Willade and Tunede in the same fashion that I've represented Willade or Tunede in the last 8 years. I'm very concerned about the employment rates in small Aboriginal communities. That's probably our biggest issue in the Northwest Territories. It seems to tie to all social indicators out there. So employment is definitely a priority for me for this riding.
Thank you. And finally, we'll hear from Richard Jericon.
Thank you. My name is Richard Jericon. I currently live in Delo. Former chief, band councillor for 10 years. One of the reasons why I'm running is to give the voice back to the constituents of our communities. For far too long, I've been involved in Aboriginal politics for a very long time. And I have never seen an MLA come to our chief and council meetings other than our former Premier Joe Hanley. But I sat down over the years and I said, okay, we're going to have to look at new ways to really represent the people in our riding. So for me, I think the next 4 years is going to be very crucial. I think we got to settle long outstanding land claim agreements. So those are just some of the issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that takes care of all the introductions. So now we're going to move into the first question. We have randomly selected our questions here. First question we're moving into is family services. And over 90% of children currently in care in the NWT or Aboriginal. What solutions will you bring to the table in terms of supporting families and keeping children in their homes and in their communities? We're going to begin with Yellowknife Center. And Mr. Robert Hawkins, please.
Thanks. Is it a minute 30? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the question. It's certainly a good question. One of the challenges we've seen here is that we're not getting good connections and supports with folks. So parents in the communities need critical supports, and that's obviously number one. We need to be getting young people connected with their families, and we need to establish those family supports that they actually make sense in each community. When I grew up in Fort Simpson, I can tell you that I remember the interrelationship that did not exist and how important were child and family services would take kids away. And we have to find a way to ensure that they're not only returned and not taken, supports from the beginning are provided to ensure solid, stable family environment exists with the needs as the family has decided it needs, not what the government necessarily needs. So we always must keep in mind that we have to keep child safety first. And of course, children are so important, but it's sometimes when you think about it, it really comes down to the stabilization and opportunities provided around the home. And that's something we have to really start focusing in on. And how do we ensure that we develop a plan of care that ensures that families don't even get into trouble from the beginning? And when we talk about this a lot of times, we're talking about trying to fix the problem after it's begun. I'd say we've been looking at this problem in the wrong direction. Why aren't we helping parents from the beginning when they need support mechanisms before we get into trouble? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Julie Green, please.
Thanks for the question. This is a problem that really goes back to some basic needs that people have for food, safety, security, housing, and so on. Without those things present, families are often in crisis. And those are the areas in which families need support in order to have a stable home and solid parenting. Obviously, that's what we want for our children. That's what we want for all children. My priority is to keep the family together if at all possible, unless there's abuse present. It's there is no replacement for a family's love for a child, even in a dysfunctional home. That is a very key bond, and I speak to that as a parent of a child I adopted as an older child and a child who's a different race. That staying in your own home with your own parents is really the first idea. I think that there's more that could be done to support adults to be better parents. I know that some communities have family support centers. I think there needs to be more focus on that, and also more focus on the 0 to 3 early childhood development, which will strengthen families as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. We're going to have the same question to Tunde Welade, beginning with Mr. Richard Jericon.
Yeah, thank you. In our communities, we've been dealing with this issue for a very long time. We have problems in our communities, whether it be social issues that are reflected in our communities. We have problems that I think that needs to be addressed. I see a lot of things in the communities where I think the Family Law Act needs to be really take a look at again and amended probably to reflect the needs of the community. We have social workers in the communities that are dealing with anywhere from 20 to 60 issues over a weekend here in Yellowknife, because we live right next to the city of Yellowknife. But our biggest concern is that the kids get apprehended, they get moved around, they go into homes here in Yellowknife, and sometimes they're there for a while. There are other issues too as well. We lose kids to other institutions sometimes, and it's really hard to get them back home. So I think there needs to be a way to really take a look at that. I'm willing to take a look at that as to how we can improve on that. So one of the things I would say that the Family Law Act needs to be looked at, and there are people in our communities that are taking in kids in, but they're only good for a certain age, and then after that they got nowhere to go because they got no homes. So again, we may have to take a look at raising the age limits somehow, and to really care for the kids in our community. It's no different than any other community in the Northwest Territories, but I would say that I think it's something that we have to take a look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you. I think that the solution lies in how we deal with the kids in care. The Yellowhead Tribal Council out of Edmonton has come up with an excellent solution, how they have reintegrated their own children from the streets of Edmonton back onto the several reserves that lie around Edmonton. And I've seen that type of success with Lincho in Mexico, and I think that's very important that the whole of the system works towards trying to resolve the issue with the kids. We could change the Child and Family Services Act, but there's something in the Child and Services Family Act that indicates that the best way to govern children in care is to have Child and Family Services committees per community. Nobody wants to sit on those communities because it's very difficult in small communities for the committees to deal with their own children, their children of their relatives, and so on. So we end up unable to make that part of the act function. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to a second question here. This one involves the issue of corrections, and it was actually submitted to us by a local law office. Indigenous people continue to be dramatically overrepresented in Canadian jails. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Office of the Correctional Investigator note that legislation meant to help establish Aboriginal healing lodges and community-centered sentencing is not being utilized. Culturally relevant programming is often unavailable, and communities are disconnected from the criminal justice system. What steps can the territorial government take to reduce the overrepresentation of Indigenous people in jail and improve the relationship between Indigenous peoples and the criminal justice system? We're going to begin with Yellowknife North, starting with Sean Erasmus.
have some ideas I want to patent and I want to produce. I want to build a not-for-profit factory in each of the provinces and territories. I want to hire and house the homeless as well as hire the youth, especially the youth at risk. I also believe that there is an overwhelming representation of Aboriginal people in the jail, which is why I think there should be a fine options program where they can work it off and maybe get a full-time job out of it so that they can support themselves and their families. Right now, I believe there's 3 people to every single cell in YK jail. And I know that some of them are homeless and have done something on purpose to get themselves in there. You know, they're shooting for 3 meals and a warm bed. So that's what I want to do. That's part of why I'm here. Trying to get that message out, and I need some help. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Nind.
Thank you. You know, it's interesting that those, the first question and this question now are almost interrelated. They are interrelated. Part of a wider interrelation for all these questions posed. How can we be healthy? That's really what the question is. And when we get in trouble, how can we come to the table and assist with that? People in the justice system are there for a reason. It's not because circumstances didn't bring them in there or allow them to do something in the community that had them enter into that justice system. So when we talk about legislation not being effective in terms of healing lodges, that really goes to the core of what is the will of leadership and the reallocation of monies to be able to put that into a program that is effective, both at the community level but territorial level as well. In terms of community sentencing, yes, there is sensitivity within the community on a case-by-case basis, but is the committee or is the community committed to that to be able to make that work? That really rides the line also with individual responsibility. So I think between the two of them, if there is will to be able to do that, and there is a will and we need to go there, then that's the solution for it.
We're going to move on to Edwin Castillo. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for the question. I believe that we should increase economic opportunities and educational supports in these communities. These would be available through seed capital funding and placement of business development officers, for example, in each community. Also, there's community futures funding that's available and enrollment in cultural programs. I'd like to make sure that they have jobs that are available for them that would enhance the self-image and their sense of community. And I'd like to see the youth engaged a lot more in terms of sports activities, cultural activities, and land-based activities that would keep them active in participation. We need to partner and collaborate with Aboriginal governments and organizations in the decision-making and options for community justice. There needs to be, for sure, local participation in order to legitimize these outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next for Yellowknife North, Corey Banthine.
Thank you, and that's a great question. And I think what I can add to the comments that have already been shared is that, of course, I agree with everybody that we need to address the underlying causes of incarceration. Most certainly that's primarily addictions and mental health. Those are other things that I'm sure we're going to be talking about later this evening. The wellness courts model launched last year shows definite promise, but I also am hearing from the RCMP that this needs refinement to make sure that people who can best benefit from wellness court systems are being directed toward it. And something else that I'll add is that we have to do something about remand times. We aren't bringing people to their day in court quick enough, and that's something that has to be improved. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Wong.
Okay, thanks for the question. You know, guys, the first thing I want to say is this is not just an issue on Aboriginal people. This is an issue of youth. This issue, above all issues, is an issue of Aboriginal youth. And, you know, why is this question important? It's important if you live in the riding of Yellowknife North, or if you live in Yellowknife and you walk downtown, you see the suffering, you may not feel safe, and you see the statistics, and you can't help but wonder what we're doing differently. So here's some ideas. Okay, let's recognize as a high priority fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, FASD, and let's develop in collaboration with Aboriginal people, FASD preventative programs. These programs need to be delivered in a culturally appropriate way. What else can we do? We can work with Aboriginal communities to provide culturally relevant services to inmates. So I'm talking about services that deal with substance abuse, family, domestic violence, overcoming the experience of having been sexually abused. I mean, there's a history here. We can also take a close look not only at community and correctional resources, but parole resources to maximize the ability of people with FASD to live in the community. And to close, I just want to let you know, these ideas, they're not mine. I actually plagiarized these ideas. I plagiarized them from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. I think the same light the territorial government needs to look at the TRC and formally respond to it very quickly in the 18th Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Yellowknife South, starting with Nijitsil Norbert.
So let's just say what it is here. We're talking about colonization in residential school, and that is a huge impact for Indigenous people and for reasons that they find themselves within the justice system. And that goes back to Duncan Scott's comment of kill the Indian in the child. I think that there's a great opportunity to create a program similar to the Yukon College's Northern Institute of Social Justice here within our communities, teaching people about community justice so that they are in the communities and sharing that information and being a support, bringing in the elders, bringing in people to take responsibility. So first the offender takes the responsibility, and then the community takes responsibility for them, and that's the idea behind community justice. The problem, though, is that there's not enough funding for community justice coordinators within the communities. They are only part-time, and then they get a tiny, tiny budget that is nothing compared to what they need for actually putting out programs. And I think this is where we need to see, and we need to create links between the community and the justice system in order to have real change within this problem that we face. And we need to face it together as communities.
Thank you. Sam Roland.
Yes, my stance on this is, the Healing Lodges, cultural centers, that, yeah, we're lacking in big areas. We can invest more in the communities to build these centers, build the people we need to be there. Bring in the elders, bring in everybody. It all comes down to cost of living and how much it's going to cost. You also got to look at the first-time offenders and the petty crime. Then, you rehabilitate with Healing Lodges, cultural centers, and then you work on, I'm Aboriginal myself. I see it a lot. You see the Aboriginal struggling. However, take race out of the equation. You do a crime, you still got to do the time. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to do 5 years. Healing Lodges can be used. We can rehabilitate with whether it be addictions or habits that they have that need to be addressed. We got to address it to the point where we got to start with crime prevention. We got to start with addressing the public, and not just Aboriginal, but everybody. And you got to look at what crimes being done, what are the major crimes, like exactly what crimes being committed, the majority. And you look at what you can do for the Aboriginals alone with healing centers and bringing in elders. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Bob McLeod.
Thank you very much. I believe it is very important to continue work towards reducing the number of Aboriginal people in custody. I support, and the government supports, the Truth and Reconciliation call for federal, provincial, and territorial governments to implement and evaluate community sanctions that provide realistic alternatives to imprisonment for Aboriginal offenders. We need to continue to explore ways to address the needs of offenders affected by addictions, mental illness, FASD, and other cognitive impairments. We need to include approaches which places a focus on the individual with its aim to address their underlying issues while identifying and building on their strengths. We have alternative courts, wellness courts. We have programs to help men deal with domestic violence. And despite all this, it's also important to recognize that the judiciary is still independent. And if we can find ways to reduce Aboriginal people from going into the corrections, I think that this will be a better service to the communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We are moving on to another question now. The question drawn from our random selection here is one submitted by the Council of Canadians, and it's on water. Climate change is just one of many threats to our water. What actions will you take to protect our northern watersheds? And we are beginning with Yellowknife Center. Julie Green, please.
Thanks very much for that question. It is the key question of our time. How are we going to protect the quantity and quality of water in the Northwest Territories? I think the water stewardship strategy that was a multi-stakeholder process produced a really good blueprint for how to take care of water. I think the focus really has to be on the next action plan and the implementation of that. There needs to be more of a focus on monitoring at the community level and at the regional level so that there is baseline information about what is in the water and how much water there is. And this is especially important before industrial development like fracking starts, where huge amounts of water are required in order to make that process work. While we have this lull in interest in oil and gas development, it's essential that we do this baseline study of water resources in the territory. We also need to pay attention to groundwater. Very little is known about it, but it's crucial to our well-being, and we need to map it and figure out where it is and where it's moving. And so I think that government has a key role to play here as the stewards of the land on behalf of all of us, and they need to embrace that by taking the water needs seriously.
Thank you, Julie. Mr. Robert Hawkins.
Thanks, Amos. Well, let's just put it out there. The Harper government gutted the laws and the programs under the Fisheries Act and the Navigable Waters Protection Acts. Well, now we have a new government and we can put those protections back into place. So I think my role, of course, would be to be someone who would advocate with the Trudeau government to repeal those terrible decisions made and put those protections back into place. And not a lot of people know that the water stewardship strategy is endorsed by the GNWT and Canada, so MLEs need to work a lot closer and harder on the important issues such as watershed and, of course, transboundary water and as even mentioned by my competitor here, even ground source water. Those are important things. Watershed is a priority in various communities and certainly by many boards, and it must be supported through their independence to do their work, but we must set out goals that demonstrate in fact that water is life. It's that important. Water is life, and it needs to have that look. And finally, I want to stress that I had the opportunity to go through as the reviews of the Transboundary Water Agreement, and I can tell you the territorial government had taken quite an aggressive position in order to protect territorial waters, but that's all well and said until you implement the processes in place, and that's, as I said earlier, water is life. We cannot give it up. It's so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert Hawkins. The Yellowknife South is the next riding we're going to go to, and we're going to begin with Sam Rowland.
All right, well, the question was what can I do to protect the watersheds and the rivers? What I can do is get education. Look at education on educating the people and businesses and help with intergovernmental relationships and community governments and Aboriginal governments and work to protect the lands and the rivers and watersheds. And on top of that, you got to also look at where you sit on a committee, where you sit as a minister, where you sit and you got different influences on different things. Now, when you sit on a committee that strictly looks at water, whether we build a committee that just strictly does that. You look at business development. You also got to look at those things and work around it, and you don't want to scare anybody away, but you also want to protect our water, because like Mr. Hawkins had said, water is life. It simply is, and we need water to survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Bob.
Thank you, Amos. The Northwest Territories has taken a very aggressive attitude towards protecting its water. We've developed NWT water strategy, which is one of the best in North America and the world. We have water stewardship strategy, which we've worked very hard with Aboriginal governments to develop. We've negotiated transboundary water agreements with British Columbia and Alberta. We are negotiating with Saskatchewan. We still have to negotiate with Nunavut and update the transboundary water agreement with Yukon. The focus on the transboundary water agreements is to maintain the quality and quantity of water. With devolution, we've realized responsibility over water management. We've increased the number of water monitoring stations. The biggest concern with regards to water is the low water levels caused by climate change, and we see that in the low water in the reservoirs for our hydro, and also with the large amounts of forest fires. And so very pleased to see that the new government of Canada will be focusing on climate change and will be investing money into a low carbon trust fund. Initially, they'll be putting $2 billion in there. So I think that's one of the ways to address it, is to also start focusing on climate change. Thank you.
And the last one to answer this question, Nahjo Norbert.
So the Mackenzie River Basin, this is the heart of our water system here in the Northwest Territories and within North America. Climate change, industrial activity, and trade agreements all threaten our northern watersheds, and we need to take this very seriously and be much more aggressive than we have been in protecting the water. On my behalf, on what I would do, is that I'd like to advocate and work on northern water protection legislation, advocate with colleagues across the country for national water protection legislation, work with colleagues and Indigenous governments to put actual legislative teeth in the recent GNWT transboundary water agreement signed with Alberta and BC. And advocate, as some other people have mentioned, to reinstate the Federal Navigable Water Act. And then obviously we have to continue to work with Indigenous governments to permanently protect land and waterways through the Dene National Park Reserve and the Tlicho North Arm Park. This is the most important aspect that we go forward into the future, and we have to be very conscious of how we're using our water, and options like fracking are not an option in my mind, and that water needs to stay in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to actually move on to another question. This one has to do with food security. Food security is a national issue, but a pronounced and serious issue for Northern Canada. A conversation across various food-related sectors has begun in Yellowknife about the systemic strategies we should initiate to tackle our regional food system challenges. What, in the next 4 years, would you be committed to working on to improve food security in the city of Yellowknife and in the NWT? And we're going to begin with Yellowknife North, starting with Corey Vanthine.
Thank you for the question. Food security most certainly is something that is important to all of us living in the north. Security is a very different issue in the north than it is in the south. Up here it is the biggest concern. It's the relationship to the cost of food. Local food production is important, but given our climate, we have to be realistic about our ability to produce food in a reasonable cost. Our focus should instead be on lobbying the feds to fix Nutrition North and improve highway infrastructure to reduce transportation costs. Those are means in which we can help secure local food. I also think that there is the opportunity to take revenues generated from resource extraction that will be put into the Heritage Fund and use that to diversify into growing other economies, and most importantly, economies such as agriculture and securing local food security. The other thing that we've done here on the city level most recently is we've put a lot of support behind community gardens. We've put a lot of support behind the food market, and most recently we supported a local food charter. And I would like to see the local food charter turned into a resolution that's presented to the NWT Association of Communities and brought to the
Thank you.
territorial government. Thank you.
We'll move on to Dan Wong.
Okay, thank you. And, you know, as a councillor here in Yellowknife, I've been a strong supporter of local food production. I've supported the Garden Collective. I've supported 10-year lease agreements at reduced rates, and that has allowed the Garden Collective to grow more community gardens, particularly on Moyle Drive and Trails End and elsewhere. And, you know, instead of just lobbying the federal government, I think we can move ahead here at the territorial level in some real ways. You know, I am a big fan of NIFTY. That's the Northern Farm Training Institute in Hay River, and I think those are actually some of the most worthwhile dollars you'll find anywhere in the territorial budget. And I'm going to continue to support organizations like that who are doing good work, who are growing food, who are training others to grow food in communities across the Northwest Territories. And I think, you know, it's not a big industry right now, but there's so much potential here. And I'm okay taking risks. I think we have to be comfortable that not all of these creative solutions are going to work. We're going to have to experiment with indoor LEDs, aquaponic systems, you know, like in Gamete, small scale poultry production. But, you know, the big thing is local food production keeps those dollars in the north. I mean, Food Mart, who's based out of Manitoba, literally just sucks money out of the territory and out of our communities, and growing our own food is a way to help stem that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Erasmus.
I would like to see greenhouses on top of every school because the loss of heat through a roof is around 26 to 40%. It all depends on if it's how well insulated it is, and if it's built strong enough to maintain another structure for it. We could capitalize by using the loss of this heat as well as redirecting some vents that are no longer needed, as we will get a crop that the kids can help grow. They could even make salad dressings and sell them to the communities, or the mines. This will reduce the amount of fuel needed to heat the schools or whatever public buildings the greenhouse is on. I would also like to see some financial assistance coming from the GMT for people who want to purchase a greenhouse and put it on their house or in their yard. They could transplant wild berry bushes, you know, wherever they're going to have mines and stuff like that, instead of just bulldozing it and wasting it, and, you know, because it's all natural. You know, it's good for you. Plus, local medicines. You know, the world has forgotten Native people have come from medicine people. We've given away over 200 medicines. So they can transplant those in the greenhouses and sell or eat the crops, and it'd be great for their school lunch programs year-round. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Nind.
Thank you for the question. The North has a long history with agriculture. It's not something new. We used to have a world-class experimental farm in Fort Simpson. We used to have a farm up in Aklavik that Dr. Livingston set up at one time. And here in Yellowknife, we used to, talking to Winnie Cadu down at the woodyard, she said she was the first one to bring in a pig farm. So we have a history there, and with great determination, I think we can have that food security and be able to operate on that at a higher level and a higher scale. Nutrition North needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed to the betterment of communities. Right now, there's a big gap between subsidies that some communities get and zero subsidies that other communities are receiving. So that needs to be fixed, and that is fixable now that we have a new federal government in. If you look at the tie-in with integrated systems, we used to have a big greenhouse operation in Norman Wells. That used to be tied to the flare that used to come off the back of it, but ESSO put that aside. We also have generators in every community that are putting out heat. That can be used year-round. we can, and taking Sean's idea, we can use it with schools, we can use it with elder centers, we can use it with community centers. So if we have the will, we can do it. And leadership is about the will. Remember, money is just a tool, and we can go from there.
Thank you very
Thank
much. Edwin Castillo.
Thank you for the question. This is all interrelated in terms of the cost of living and affordability, of course. I do support that local food charter just to drive the cost of food down. I think also our transportation infrastructure needs to be improved so we can access a lot cheaper goods and be able to have communities be able to grow their own food. The farmers market is an example here in Yellowknife of a successful movement that helps address the food security, and it also brings the community together. The potato farm in Satu, for example, is also another one. I support community greenhouses, but we also need to reduce the energy costs that's associated with that, again related to the affordability issue. There's a garden in Dilo that's coming in and being a lot more successful. Traditional foods are also need to be included, including promoting our fisheries. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Tunede Willade, we're going to start with Tom Bolio.
Thank you for the question. I am talking about securing food in Yellowknife and food security in some of the small Aboriginal communities is talking about two completely different things. In the small, one of the small communities that I represent with no access, no highway access, they either haul their food by snowmobile or go to the local co-op, which the cost, although it's not indexed at that in the cost of living index, is much higher than 2 times as much, or you pay $1.38 a pound to ship it, and you got to pay for the ticket to get here to buy it also. So food security in the small communities is a very, very huge issue. And individuals that are concerned about food security in Yellowknife would not be able to imagine that you could just walk down to the store and buy something for half the cost of what you're able to buy it in a place like Lutzelke. Even in Fort Resolution, where they have all-season road, it's not quite as drastic of a difference, but it differs as well. And the food security issue in the other community that I'm beginning to learn about, Dilo, is that I think we have to get some sort of organized hunting for country foods in order to assist those individuals in securing food. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Ejerikon.
Yeah, thank you. As a child growing up in Fort Resolution, my grandmothers and my grandfathers and people in the community always had a community garden. Actually, it's really good now that we come back to the community of Dilo. We got greenhouses, we got community gardens. Again, those are good things to see in the communities. Given that we have high cost of living here in the north and the Nutrition North program, sometimes I think it doesn't go far enough, and I think maybe the GNWT needs to play a greater role in that too as well, somehow subsidizing some of that cost as well. But at the same time, we need to take a look at how we can bring those costs down at the local level. And it's, again, going back and looking at Dilo, it's really good to see greenhouses. I never seen that there. Actually, I was gone for a few months here and came down there was a greenhouse down there. I was really surprised to see that. So anyway, I think it's something that's much needed, but I think GNWT needs to play a greater role in subsidizing part of the program perhaps, and so that we can provide some good food to the people in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ejerikon. We're going to move on to another question here, the one on governance. Residents throughout the territory have doubts as to the effectiveness of our current consensus government model. How do you propose improving or refining the system to be better representative of Northerners while appropriate for our unique Northern context? Once again, that question was, how do you propose improving or refining the system to be better representative of Northerners while appropriate for our unique Northern context? And we are going to begin with, is this the right one? Yes. Yellowknife South, and in Yellowknife South, we'll start with Bob, please.
Thank you very much for the question. In my view, our current consensus government system works very well when we compare it to a party system. When the consensus government, looking back when we had the 20th anniversary of the Legislative Assembly, when we had all of the former premiers there, it became very apparent that over the years with consensus government, you keep building on the work that was done by previous governments until you get it done. Whereas if you go to a party system, depending on which party, you're going one direction to the other. I think that we can work to improve in certain areas. We have protocols that we have put in place so that we can share information. I think that we need to find a way to get more people to participate in the process. I think that with this election, I think that we've had very good turnouts, and I think that this will continue in the future. I think that we need, in the past, we would travel around to different parts of the territory to promote the government and the Legislative Assembly, and we need to continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod. Nijitzel Norbert, please.
I think there's a lot of room for improvement, actually, within the consensus government style. You know, there was a time when we would all sit down, the bands would come together and you'd sit down and you'd work and work and work, and then if things weren't settled, you'd come back at the table and you'd work again. And I think that there's room to go back to those traditional ways, but in a 21st century model. You know, it's this idea that we're all in this together and we all need to have a fair representation and a voice at that table together. I think also there was some interesting perspectives going forward with the idea of developing a 2-2-2-1 convention where it was 2 from South, 2 from North, and 2 from the center of the Northwest Territories, and 1 person that would be elected to represent the other, which in my case, for example, could be women, and that would be a dedicated seat within this consensus government because we need fair representation. As far as strengthening consensus government, you know, we need to decrease the ability to have these closed doors, this non-transparency and this non-accountability that has been happening within the last 4 to 8 years. And I think there is much room for improvement, and I hope to be a part of that improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Nijitzel. Sam Rowland, please.
Yes, as both my friends to my left and to my right, both are very right in every way. You know, the consensus government I find it's working, but is it working great? You know, there could be room for improvement. However, the one thing I do believe is as an elected leader, official, you're elected there by the people. The people put you there. So if you're looking after the people, you now entrusted that person to represent your best interests. So when you vote a cabinet in, I find it's the perfect way to do it, because now you got the elected officials you put there are now using their best interest and your best interest to figure out who's going to lead this territory in the positive direction and in the right direction. The consensus party government wouldn't quite work. We'd have, like Bob had said, too many parties, too many changes, too many different things. You got to work on each government after every 4 years. You got to continue to work through it and continue to develop. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Just so all the candidates know, we are planning to ask this question of all of you tonight. And next on the list is Yellowknife Centre riding, and beginning with Robert Hawkins.
Thanks, Amos. Actually, it's a fantastic question because really the question is consensus government effective? And frankly, I don't think it's effective most days, and so those who are critical of it are absolutely correct. It's been my experience there's very little accountability when it comes to the cabinet decisions, and it's very challenging. And if you've been there, you know cabinet only has to reach out to grab a couple people in order to get their agenda through, so it really is struggles. Now, it does work in some areas of sharing information and people working together. I mean, you couldn't take ideas from your side of the house and any opposition, that is, in any house across the world and say, hey, I got a good idea. The one value that I find here is that sometimes they do pick up the idea. And if it's a really good idea, it becomes their idea and they never speak to you again. So in truth, that's how it works. You know, consensus has its high points, but it also has its low points, and that's why people are worried about the effectiveness of consensus government, and that's why they're calling for party politics, really. So let's put it on the table. It's the effectiveness and accountability. You have no way of holding the Premier or the Cabinet Minister's account without getting mad at your MLA, frankly. And if your MLA isn't the Minister, the Premier, or whatever that department you're pissed off this weekend at, well, then you're chewing on your MLA and asking that one person to challenge the whole government. It's tough. So I'd say, you know, if you want to be radical, and I'm certainly not a status quo guy, if you want to be radical, get out there and say the Premier needs to be elected at large. We elected an MP at large. Why can't we elect a Premier? There's nothing stopping us but ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Julie Green.
When I've been campaigning in the last 2 weeks, I've heard lots about governance. I have to say I've heard more about governance in the last 2 weeks than in the last 15 years. People care about it. They are not seeing the level of accountability in this current system that they want to see. They feel that people go into the Legislative Assembly and they kind of disappear in there, and they don't have a say afterwards. What it says to me is that it really is time for a broad consultation on this topic. I think people need to talk, and they need to talk about the pros and cons of consensus government, party politics. I think there's a lot to be said for both of them. But I do recognize that the time is now to have that conversation. Certainly what I've seen in the last Legislative Assembly is a failure of the regular MLAs to work together and exercise their power. I've seen increasingly remote and executive style government from Cabinet. And so the result is that it seems very partisan and frankly very non-functional. Things could work better if people work together. And I don't see that happening to the extent that I feel that it should. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Tuninde Willade next, and first on deck, Mr. Richard Edgericon.
Thank you for the question. I too agree that I think this time has changed now where we really need to take a look at this whole government system we have here in the Northwest Territories. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't work. The way I see it is that on one hand, once you select a cabinet, it's there. You have the MLAs on the other side of the house. There's no way to really hold those guys to account, and I'm a little concerned about that. We have to look at new ways to really make this government work. And from watching for a number of years, look at the way it's been operating, I'm not happy with it. I think it's time that we really need to sit down and look at new models and new ways to do this, because once the cabinet is in there, they could do whatever they want to do. We can't hold those guys to account. And I think it's time that we really need to change that. And I think we should take a look at doing that the next 4 years here and make it happen. I agree, the Premier of the Northwest Territory should be put out to election, and whoever's got the strongest vision for the Northwest Territory should be the Premier. But this government right now has no vision, no mandate, so I'm really concerned about that. So anyways, I want to make sure that we have a say, and let's change it. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Next, Tom Bolio, please.
Thank you. Having discussion on consensus government, our style in Northwest Territories versus party politics is something that goes on. It comes up frequently. It's a matter of how the government wishes, or the people wish to be governed. As a consensus government, there's a permanent minority government in place, and that's what happens. As a party government, there's potential to have a majority government, which can then impose their own mandate upon anything they wish to do. If they have a minority government, there's also, and a party politics is also a great potential for the government to be brought down instantly and then having another election. So it becomes something that I think has to be well thought out. It has to be, both sides have to be viewed. Considering the size of our population, we have to weigh the odds of how a party politics would look in the NWT. I think we have Yukon as a model that we could look at and see how effective they are. If we find that Yukon's very effective, maybe it is an opportunity for us to look at party politics. If we're finding that we are more effective than the Yukon, maybe we should stay with consensus government. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We are going to move into the final riding here, Yellowknife North. Just as a little bit of information, we are going to take our scheduled break after we're done with these ridings. So we're going to begin with Ben Nin, please.
So we kind of deal with an oxymoron. We have a legislative assembly that has a chamber that's round, but it's totally fractured. It deals in a base of here's the opposition and here's the ones who are in executive. And so the roundness that beats up each other. So it doesn't make much sense. And I've often said consensus government works either really well or you have to carry a big stick. And right now, I think individuals need to carry a big stick because we've got to tune consensus government in if it's going to work. There's other models that can work. Perhaps giving everybody a piece of the pie of the executive. In other words, distributing responsibility to all members. That's a suggested model. The other suggested model is perhaps, because here in the Northwest Territories, it's nothing but a big, friendly little town, that we operate like a town council does. So the mayor is elected, like the premier is elected, and the members are elected at large, and the deputy ministers become head of their responsible departments and are answerable to the whole rather than just to executive decision. So for me, it's a matter of looking at those models and starting to have that discussion and opening it up and then
Thank you, Ben.
Proceeding from there. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Edwin Castillo, please.
Thank you. You know, consensus government has worked in the past, and I think it can work again. However, at this point, we see diminishing accountability. From what I see, like, we're all working towards the same goals. It's all in your best interest as well. So if we can build on those common grounds and resolve our priorities through mutual respect and sharing of values through collaboration, I think it can work again. I've heard from some of my Aboriginal friends and colleagues that traditionally decisions were considered as a product of dialogue that formed the decisions, and that the decision considered was the product of dialogue that formed the decision. The decision was considered as greater than the sum of its parts. This definition places a higher value on community, dialogue, and process than individual decision makers. I've been watching like this ISERView model in this light with a little bit of interest. And although I understand that it was built for municipal government and not the territorial government, I wonder if there's a way that we could harness this potential at a similar feedback mechanism to provide non-binding, a form of greater public input and sharing in our decisions. A place for community discussions on issues that matter to Northerners and that could help provide additional context for MLAs.
Thank you. We have Corey Van Thyn, please.
Thank you, and thank you to the previous comments shared. I'll try to add. I do agree that the system is somewhat broken, or at least it appears to be. Every one of the doors that I've been knocking at, most people will agree that they have this sense that decisions are not made openly and transparently, that they are made behind closed doors. I know that Dan can speak to this as well. We just came from the experience of having one of the most open types of government there is, and that's the municipal form of government. All issues are laid before us publicly and open to the public, and they're debated in the public, and we make our decision there on the spot, and then the rubber hits the road. I also agree with Ben that we have to put every option to consider on the table. The one with regard to municipal government is maybe one to consider. If you want to run for mayor, you got to put your name in the hat to run for mayor. You want to run for premier, you maybe got to do the same thing. Okay, and so these are the things that we have to consider. But in the meantime, I do know and I agree that any political system is only as good as the representatives that are elected to it. Consensus government naturally will fall down when our representatives are not dutifully doing their work. And so I most certainly will pledge to do the best I can and work with the other 19 officials to ensure that we advocate the priorities of Northerners. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Dan Wong, please.
All right, thank you. And I guess the first thing I want to say is I actually don't believe that consensus government is even linked to the northern traditional decision-making structures in Aboriginal communities in the first place. I know there are influences of Dene, Métis, and Inuit customs, but really these governance structures we have now were set up well before Aboriginal people even had the right to vote. And I think the origins of the design that you see today, even though called consensus government, really had less to do with the cultural sensitivity from Ottawa as it did with the federal government's desire to maintain control over the appointed officials installed out west and up north. And I think that matters today because we've seen, although the structure has changed over the years, we've seen how easy it is to have governance by the executive, governance by cabinet, and I think we have seen that in the 17th Assembly. And you know, for that to change, perhaps that's our biggest challenge as MLAs. I mean, ultimately, we need to come together and we need to get over this us versus them mentality that seems to consume every assembly. And I think we need to do that by actually listening to one another and actually doing the hard work of understanding not just the challenges, but the aspirations of all the regions and get beyond our regional differences. And that's something I'm certainly willing to do.
Thank you, Dan Wong. The last word goes to Sean Erasmus.
Not a hell of a lot to add to that. But either one you do. You could use Office Online. It's free, so that'll to work together on projects, which will reduce flights and help us or them to reach consensus on projects or subjects. And if they do have, I realize they have a speaker. This person's one's being paid $44,000 and another one's paid what, $9,000 or that. So one's the main one, one's the part-time or whatever, just for when this guy's sick. Why don't they just have two of them at equal time so that they could benefit, that they could bring their concerns from their constituents a little bit better. That's about all I can add to this for now. But I do agree that it's not exactly working too good and there's too much secrets going on. And I'll cut that short. Oh, I don't like that since I got like 20 seconds. I do have a business diploma and I'm about halfway through to get my degree, and I just want to start my business, but I can't right now because my family lot didn't go through probate, and it's been 9 years now since my dad died today. So if you see me cry once in a while, now you know.
We're sorry to hear for your loss there. Losing a loved one's always tough. It is now our scheduled break time. We are going to take 5 minutes. It should be enough to do a quick restroom break, and then we'll call you back to the table. At that point, for all of you, we'll do a couple of more scheduled questions, and then try to get into the Q&A section of the evening. For those of you online, we will return to the floor in about 5 minutes, and check out our Twitter feed to find out when we're back up. Thank you. Okay, everybody. 5 minutes flies. It's not a long time, I know, but we do have a lot of questions to get through this evening, so I would request and ask politely that you all return to your seats so that we can resume our Yellowknife Candidates Forum. Okay, we're going to get going here.
All right, we're going to ask that the candidates take their seats. Everybody get back to their seats so we can finish the second portion of the evening. If everybody could please return to their seats, we're going to get started right away in under a minute. Thank you. It's not yours? Oh, it's one of your fans. Yeah. Thank you. We're going to get started. Richard Ajericon, could you take your seat? All right. So we're going to start out with a question on the economy, and it's going to be directed at all candidates. And the question is, the economy of the Northwest Territories has historically been dependent on non-renewable resource extraction, making us vulnerable to boom and bust cycles characteristic of oil, gas, and mining activities. What strategies do you suggest for economic diversification in the North? And we're going to begin with Yellowknife Center, starting with Julie Green.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I think there are lots of opportunities to diversify the economy. That doesn't mean that we need to close down all the mining immediately, but there are ways to replace things that are currently imported with locally produced goods. There was a question about food security. That's a perfect example. The farmers market is a new undertaking in Yellowknife, and it puts $1 million a year into the economy. So food is a growth industry here, as is wood and pellet production. Everybody needs wood to heat their homes, or pellets, or they should be using that since it's renewable. And so there are jobs available in that area. Also in the renewable area, trapping, fishing, hunting, gathering berries, plants, etc., arts and crafts, tourism. Those are all very promising areas that have already started to grow and could grow more. They have excellent multipliers, meaning that the number of jobs that they produce are much more significant than in the industrialized economy. And they also provide for the triple bottom line of economic, environmental, and social accountability. So I think there's lots of opportunity to develop local economies in order to diversify our economy.
Thank you. Robert Hawkins.
Fantastic question, because you know, we need a strong, healthy economy, because that's critical to keep our north moving forward and growing. As a matter of fact, the GDP in last year, it was $3.8 billion. So when we think about the mining, oil and gas, and even the resource sector when it comes to diamonds, that actually represents almost $1.8 billion. That's over half of the GDP. So frankly, or approximately half, sorry. So frankly, we can't just pretend it doesn't exist, and we certainly can't pretend it's not important. It's absolutely critical for us to get tax revenues. It provides jobs. But the question really comes down to is how do we diversify? And frankly, that's it. I mean, we can't put all our eggs in one basket, and certainly the mining basket is fantastic, but I can't think of another $1.8 billion option for us. But what can we do? We need to diversify in other things. I'm actually promoting that we should be saying to ourselves, like, why not let's spread out Aurora College? I'm a big believer about getting Aurora College out of the building it's in now, allow it to expand, allow it to grow. We've got a blanket building sitting empty. That would make an amazing campus for Aurora College. And by the way, campuses, colleges, universities are an incredible generator of wealth in our community. It creates such economic stimulus. It's fantastic, and it would allow our students to grow. In short, with time running out, I think many of the small business areas of traditional crafts, arts, and tourism need to be fostered. Our film is budding, but I'll tell you, there's so much promises. Let's spread the opportunities around and not limit them. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to Yellowknife South now, starting with Nijitzel Norbert.
So the reality going forward actually is that the reliance on fossil fuels and similar industry like oil and gas, that's actually an outdated idea, and I don't feel bad saying that. The idea of moving forward into green energies, that has a real opportunity for us to not only create jobs, but make communities more sustainable within themselves so that they can then move forward putting money towards whatever they'd like, programs, cultural camps. More ideas that I have, I get really excited about thinking about the economy because there's so many options, art, culture, heritage, and how really that can, we've seen that with the Yukon government, and they put a heavy importance on such things. Also, there's the idea of investing in people and youth, and as we've heard, education is incredibly important to support the base of youth that are coming up, including myself, and we're going to be the future. So it's having more programs at Yukon College, art, media, film, Indigenous studies, community justice. These are ways that we can support from the ground up rather than from the other way. Thanks.
Thank you. Samuel Rowland.
Yes, as we all know, most of our revenues are coming from non-renewable energy and non-renewable resources. That is a big chunk, but it also creates jobs, and we can look into renewable and alternative sources of energy and resource revenues. With non-renewable, you also build own revenues, resources there. You also got jobs that are created, with the amount of natural gas that's sitting in the Beaufort Delta, with the amount of oil that's sitting in the Sawtooth. Yeah, it's an older style of thinking. It's the older style of doing things. However, it's going to create jobs for Northerners, keep money in the north, build money, build the economy. We got to invest into something that's going to create jobs for Northerners and think about the young people and lower the cost of living, make it attractable to the people of the south and business. Let business invest into the territories. Make it a beautiful place to invest. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob McLeod.
Thank you very much for the question. In the Northwest Territories, the mining is the largest part of our economy. Every year a diamond mine operates. It's worth $250 million to our economy. Our oil and gas sector has declined. All of the oil and gas exploration companies have packed up and left, and so we're back to where it's very important in this time where our economy is not doing that well. We have to we traditionally fall back on our traditional economies where the local hunting and trapping and so on is very important. We're very pleased to support the traditional economy because it's one of the best ways to get money to the people in the communities to continue to practice their way of life. We have an economic opportunity strategy that looks at all of the local economies. I think it's very important to have an economic development project in every community. And again, I was very pleased with the agenda of the new Liberal government where they've indicated they will be investing $200 million more annually into innovation and clean technologies in specific sectors such as forestry, fisheries, mining, energy, and agricultural sectors. So we certainly would want to take advantage of that. They have also indicated that they will they'll do investments in energy sustainability in the Northwest Territories.
Thank you very much, Bob. Moving on to Tunede Willade, we're going to begin with Tom Bolio.
Thank you for the question. Historically, it hasn't always been mining, gas and oil. When they were building Yellowknife in the 40s and 50s, they took the trees out the banks of the Slave River near Fort Resolution. There were many sawmills down there, and that was essentially a big industry. Then mining came along, and as the previous speaker said, most of the resource revenues are from mining. I believe that we need to continue to support mining. We need to build infrastructure to make it easier for that industry to function. We have rare earths right near Yellowknife here that's trapped because they don't have good infrastructure around that. We have a lot of oil and gas in the Northern Wells area trapped because we don't have proper infrastructure. So infrastructure spending and trying to extract the resources is a good way. And this government also can fall back on a few the non-renewable resources. We have forest management agreements that essentially will become part of producing pellets in enterprise. And we also tripled the budget for hunters and trappers in this government so that those people that wish to do a traditional economy can also make that pursuit. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Jericon.
Yeah, thank you. In 1990, I remember being in Dene when BHP first came to our community and talked about building a diamond mine. We used to, back in 1990, then 1996, we were told to make a deal with BHP, and we had 60 days. On day 57, the mining company finally sat down with us at the hotel here, and we made a deal on day 60. And but I was going to say, back in 1990, when we started this whole thing, BHP bought steak and lobster to a chief and council meeting. 1996, we were given 60 days to make a deal. 1999, we had a meeting with BHP again. They gave us soup and sandwiches. But I just want to say that, it wasn't for the mining industry here in Yellowknife, as when Giant Mine and Con Mine were starting to shut down, this place would have been a ghost town. It wasn't for the mining industry. And, in our community, we would have probably about 70% of people unemployment. We raised that and turned that around. We had a lot of people in our communities working in the mining industry. So I would say that, we need to take a look at new ways to sustain ourselves going into the future, whether it be oil and gas mining or green energy or that type of thing. But at the end of the day, we need to take a look at creating jobs for our people in our communities. So I just leave that there. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Yellowknife North, starting with Edwin Castillo.
Thank you. There's uncertainty in changing times, but of course there's also opportunities. We need to take advantage of these opportunities, of course, that are self-sustaining. And I applaud the work that's already been done in bringing up the tech sector, the satellite facilities over to Inuvik, the region, through the Mackenzie Valley Fiber Optic Link for increased bandwidth, business competitiveness, and also the vision for a Mackenzie Valley Highway. It provides greater access for communities in terms of growth and development. We also need to recognize that we are a resource-based economy, as Tom had said. Mining still our number one and most important area in terms of delivering high-paying jobs and in terms of our gross expenditure base. We need to look at using our resource money from this area to diversify and invest in education, like Arctic College, Dechinta, in our people, of course, and also invest in the renewable sectors, including green alternative energy sources such as solar, biomass, wind, hydro, return of the river, basically, so that it's environmentally friendly, that have steady, dependable growth to hedge the boom and bust cycle of resource development that are environmentally friendly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Dan Wong.
Okay, no, thanks for the question. You know, this one is very near and dear to my heart. So if you do have a bit of time, please check out www.votedanwong.com, and I'd love to hear back from you. And you know, forgive me, I'm gonna get a little nerdy here and throw some numbers at you, but I think it's important to look at return on investment here. Now, if you invest $1 million in the oil and gas industry, which is very automated, you're gonna get back 1.3 on average person years of employment. Now, you throw that same amount of money at film and digital media production, 7 person years. Renewable energy, 13. Local food production, 8.5. I don't have the numbers for tourism, but also high. So I think if we're talking about jobs, let's invest in these labor-intensive industries that not only diversify our economy, but create the highest number of jobs, good jobs. And I'm also going to plug the University of the North. I know you guys have heard so many people mention that over the course of tonight and last night. You know, we have newly minted city councilor here, Julia Morris, who's been a strong advocate too. I can't help but feel like everyone's gonna be sorely disappointed if we can't get this done in the 18th Assembly, but it actually gives me hope that, yeah, maybe we can take this long-standing desire and turn it into something real. Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna go on to Sean Erasmus next.
Well, I'm not all for oil and gas either, but maybe the federal and territorial governments should fund the indigenous governments in each region to own a minimum of 50% of each new mine going forward. This way, they could hire more staff and have more money to pay them a retirement package, as well as pay other big ticket items like schools and whatever is needed. Why should we let the whole world benefit from our resources more than us? I would like to see more additional funding going towards expanding the old hap houses, which have a crawl space where they store their water and sewage tanks. Also, there may be other buildings like this that could be renovated to increase the size of the home, and they could start up the businesses in there, or just for extended family. The main floor could be jacked up 4 more feet, and they would have 4 more rooms to use for extended family or to start a business. They can make them there and sell it online. I also believe we should build a school at one of the diamond mines for K to 12 students. This is where we will get our next generation of geologists and geotechs, engineers, etc. The kids can be introduced and be surrounded by these people at a very young age. This will increase the NWT's GDP, which whole families can go to the mine, and workers, significant other, can get a job there also. There would be less need for housing in the north. There'll be less maternity leave because there'll be people right there to take care of their young.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. Thank you, Sean. Next, we're going to hear from Corey Van Thyn.
Thank you, and there's been many great comments provided so far. Like most people, I do recognize the importance of our resource industry, and I appreciate what it contributes to our GDP. It is very significant. But I also recognize that right now it is in a very risky situation. As been referred to earlier, most all of our eggs are lying in one basket, and that's the diamond basket. There's maybe some need to look at diversification within resource extraction, but more importantly, there's a need to look at diversification in other industries. I would like to work to make the NWT Heritage Fund an economic diversification tool preserving the benefits of resource development for future generations through investment in arts and culture, hunting and trapping, fishing, forestry and agriculture, renewable energy, manufacturing, and tourism. I also believe, as an entrepreneur and somebody who owns 2 businesses, in fact, I'd like to see the GNWT establish a 0% small business tax rate for all new businesses. This would be a great support mechanism and incentive for entrepreneurs to start up. And like everybody else, though, I do agree, and we need to prioritize and invest in the right infrastructure projects to provide necessary power and transportation for sustainable living and to attract investment. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we'll hear from Ben Nind.
Thank you. Wonderful question. Goes to the heart and the root of how we operate. There's a saying, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. So we're in a boom for a while, and then we're in a bust, and right now we're headed for a bust. And it's not looking very good. So I would operate on the basis of what if. What if there was no mining going on in the territories, and what if there was no oil and gas reserves in the territories, and what if none of that was there to draw upon what we think is the answer for all our problems? What would we do? So if I look at it, we're a pretty resilient group. We're a very resilient group. We use our imagination, and we use the resources that we have around us to make things happen for ourselves. It was that way long before Yellowknife was ever here. So I look at that and say, okay, what if? What if we invested in the green technologies that are starting, that are right now the biggest growth sector in Canada? What if we then applied that for digital technology here in the north? What if we looked at increased online sales for our arts products and our cultural products? What if we then tied that to world-class tourism opportunities throughout the Northwest Territories? What if we continued to look at harvesting the forest?
Thank you, candidates. So this next round of questions, we're going to go back to the 2-and-2 format, beginning with the question on education. Elders and educators across the territory have identified a need for more land-based education. What can the territorial government do to increase support for land-based learning at all levels of schooling? And we will begin with Yellowknife Centre, Mr. Robert Hawkins.
Fantastic question. Well, let's just put it out there. If we're serious about it, let's increase the budget and stick with it. Why be afraid of it? We need land-based education because that's what people are wanting, and they feel that that's important. I mean, I've talked to many people in the communities, and that's what they're asking for. So we need to find the funding, and we need to reallocate it in the department, and we have to just say, this is what it is, we need to do it. So let's make it a priority. If we're serious about it, you know, talk is certainly cheap. So why not have the courage to stick with what's important to us? I know nobody out there who criticizes it. I know everybody who's in support of it. So what's stopping us? The system. The system itself has been the biggest detractor not getting behind this. The Department of Education needs to get committed behind this particular program because I think it's important. It brings value, and if anything, it helps foster good community cultural relationship. It strengthens language, it strengthens connection to lands, strengthens connections to elders, families. There are so many pluses about these opportunities. So, how do we get there? Well, I think the GNWT needs to focus in on what it does and what it should do. It should provide the money. It should partner with Aboriginal organizations and just say, this is our objective. We need kids out there. We need families out there. We need to be working with elders. We need to do this. Don't miss the opportunity of the traditional knowledge elders bring to the informal classroom, which is the world classroom in our communities and on the land. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Green, please.
Thanks for that question. I have seen with my own daughter the benefits of on-the-land education. It provided her with a link to her culture, with a link to developing skills that she might not otherwise have developed, and to gain self-esteem from having those skills, and to gain in confidence. And so I do believe that on-the-land education is a valuable tool in the schools for everyone. I don't think it should only be for Aboriginal people. I think all of us could benefit from knowing what to do on the land. It's my understanding that the government has allocated more money to this program starting in the next fiscal year. That certainly needs to remain a priority, even though these are hard times for budgeting. The overall goal of keeping youth in school and making them successful at school in order for them to graduate and to have options for post-secondary education, apprenticeships, and other kinds of training is just vitally important. It's the very best thing that we can do for our youth. And so it needs to be a priority even in hard times, so that the ultimate goal is that children thrive and they graduate.
Thank you, Julie. The next riding we're moving into is Yellowknife South, and the first person will be Sam Rowland, please.
All right, well, this, you know, for us to do this and move forward, you know, and work with better on-the-land education, and I come from a community where that you know, we strive in a place called Reindeer Station, where they just modified it, and they use it for an educational place, and to bring the elders out to teach the youth and even adults. You know, we as a territory, we got to work with community governments and build a stronger connection and get the elders out. We got so many elders out there. I know Bobby, I think he's in the room here maybe, he still has the Dene, and he has great camps out there. You know, we can utilize resources and people like that where they have these camps, and we can continue to produce young people or learn about their culture and connecting with their ground roots and connect. Sorry, just need a drink. And when you connect with your ground roots, you know where you're coming from. You know culture. At a very young age, I started going on the hunts. I started trapping. I started hunting. It really makes and shapes you as a young person and makes you a better adult altogether. And you know, I think with cultural programs on the land for young people and adults, it's definitely going to benefit everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob McLeod, please.
Thank you for the question. I'm a big fan of land-based education. I think it's very important for the schools. We have a number of programs. We have Take a Kid Trapping, where we've had Take a Kid Harvesting. We've had over 4,000 children go through the Take a Kid Trapping program. We find that it's very beneficial for them in developing self-esteem, life skills, survival, and independence. And there are a number of government departments that have funding that they can contribute. Departments of MACA, Health and Social Services, EC&E, ENR. EC&E also has a Dene Kide curriculum, which provides for land-based education, and I think the schools do a great job in getting elders out and getting them to learn from off the land. And we even have examples of some students that use trapping proceeds to fundraise for school travel. So I think the more opportunities we do in this area, the better it is for all the students. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nijitzel Norbert.
From a very young age, I remember the importance of when we would go to DELO or DEDA in our school, and those were non-Indigenous and Indigenous students that went out, and I remember identifying with my culture for the first time and what that actually felt like. So I'm a huge supporter of land-based education. I think it shows a form of resistance to the current colonial structure that we live in, and it can really help push understanding and build those relationships back up from the ground. I think that we can learn from what's already happening in NWT communities like Fort Providence and the Kalemi Dene School in DELO. I think they're doing amazing work, and I would continue to advocate for cultural camps and land-based outings for students and for permanent positions in our schools from K to 12, that would lead students all the way from, the young age all the way up to grade 12, and then, then that could continue into, Indigenous studies here at a college or a university. I would like to be working on the side of decolonization on this matter, and I'll make it an ongoing topic among MLAs if I get elected. And I think that, it's 2015. I think it's time that we, take a look at this again and make it even more, that more important and that much more funded.
Thank you. We're going to move on to another question having to do with language. What will you do to ensure that the protection and promotion of all of the Indigenous languages in the territory? And this question is first going to Tunede Willide, and we're going to begin with Richard Ajericon.
Yep, thank you. That's a really good question. I think in our communities, this is a big issue. Just so people know that Tunede and Willide, the way here in this area, it's a kind of like a hybrid between the Clecho and the Chippewa. So this is the area that we talk about, which is called the Willide. But the way the funding works within the government of the Northwest Territories is that a lot of the monies that is earmarked for either the Chippewa or the Clecho program or slavery or the whatever in that area. But the thing is that here in this area, the biggest issue here, what I've been hearing, is that the monies that we get for the Clecho language goes to the Clecho government, but for the Willide monies we need, some of it goes to the Quechua for the Chippewa language. So somehow we're going to have to change that around and really tell people that, the Willide is live and well here. We're on the land here, which is basically Chippewa and the Clecho and the hybrid. This is why we call it Willide. So that's kind of missed out. So that's one area that we want to really improve on. And I want to work with the GWT government to get that recognized and probably funded. Right now in DEDA, we just don't have the necessary funding to continue on with programs because the money is just not there. We almost have to go to the Clecho and beg for monies. So thank you.
Thank you. Tom Bolio.
Merci, Duri Dania TC, but Ada Asnet Halalatao, Hadu John Art, John King Chanta to Tanta to Hadu Al Nunisi Nuits not care riding a Sanilio. Hadu saw Tania Tia to a chala Nuni Tanya Tito, King Chaya Tito, Hadu Balt to the Altia So if I continue on as MLA, I do everything I can to not only speak my language in the Legislative Assembly, but to support Aboriginal languages 100%.
Thank you very much. And we apologize, we don't have translators here. This is an English language forum, but thank you very much for that response. We're moving on to Yellowknife North, and we're going to begin with Ben Nind.
Language goes to the heart of a culture. It's the heart of identity. And so for me, supporting that is really about who we are and what we are. So we need to promote the retention of this language. I would say that we need to appoint language keepers and pay them in the communities so that each language is represented and that position is then rotated. They become then ambassadors for that language throughout the region, throughout the territory, throughout the country, throughout the world. We need to be able to then retain those languages and retain those languages in terms of the stories you collect, in terms of the dictionaries that are there so that they are continually updated, so that the digital tools, such as what we see with the Clecho language right now, are done for all of the languages, and that we reach right into the heart of the children and the homes to be able to have that language spoken on a daily basis. We need to promote that use, and then we need to really celebrate those languages in all the materials that both government and public institutions and anybody who is interested in those languages are putting out to the public to be able to see, to be able to hear, and to be able to read. Thank you.
Thank you. Edwin Castillo?
Thank you. As I mentioned before, I came here when I was a pretty young lad. And unfortunately, at that time, I did know my own basic language, Filipino, but I've forgotten it throughout the years that I've been here. So I deeply regret that, not being fluent in that. It's primarily because, you know, I've missed out on the opportunities and the relationship, building that relationship and having a greater connection with the Filipino community and my culture. So I do recognize the need and the importance to preserve a cultural identity, including language. And for me, this in the North, it'll start with a review of the Official Languages Act. I'd like to support overall language exposure and promotion, and of course, even courses for people to learn again and regain their language and their mother tongues. And this could be done in association and in partnership with government, economic development, with of course a focus on youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Erasmus?
I would like to see it as a mandatory class taken by all students. They can have their choice which Aboriginal language they would choose to learn. This could also be done out on the land as well as in the classroom. I would like to review the budget and see how much money we can manage to help with this. Maybe we should make some apps in all the languages in the regions. That might help too. And that's about all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Dan Wong?
Thank you. The Northwest Territories actually recognizes 9 official languages in the Official Languages Act, and you know what that means is we have more official languages written in legislation than any other jurisdiction in Canada. And you know, why is that important? Well, of course, because language is linked to culture and land. And if you look at the Dene Nahjo vision statement, it's simply land, language, culture, forever. Now, am I concerned that the health of many of our Indigenous languages is in jeopardy? Yes, and I think there's a serious risk actually that within my lifetime one of these languages may go to sleep. But communities and language activists across the Northwest Territories, they're actually working hard to document their language. I want to mention the work of JC Firth, who runs the Facebook site Speak Gwich'in to Me. And there's also similar sites for Clicho and Dene Zate, that's South Slavey. So what can I do as MLA? Well, you know, it's pretty simple to me. That's support communities in reaching their language revitalization goals. And I also want to note that we can't address the loss of languages without addressing the legacy of residential schools. And I think the TRC's calls to action also provide excellent direction on what we need to do to support Indigenous language revitalization. Masi Kwana.
Thank you. Corey Van Thyn, for last word.
Thank you. And as Dan alluded to, there are 9 official Aboriginal languages in the NWT, and they are all equally important. But unless they become truly relevant to our everyday living, then they can be in serious jeopardy. There is no doubt that we spend our time on things we value. The Clicho are an excellent example of valuing their language and spending time and money investing in it, and it seems to be paying off. Every language community has examples of good work, but as I said, it has to be relevant to daily life. We need to hear our languages spoken all the time in the workplace, in government, in stores, schools, health centers, and so on. We need signage in our languages so we can see it written. We need to talk to elders and grandparents who hold the languages and speak them all the time. The sad truth, of course, as mentioned, is that residential schools stole languages from an entire generation of Aboriginal people. Restoring languages to their former strength is not an easy task and should be led by the language speakers themselves and not by the government. That is where the true desire and expertise resides. Having said that, government has a responsibility to fund language learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. We are going to proceed into the Q&A section of the evening now. And I'm going to start with a question that we got from, I believe, Twitter. Before I ask the question, however, I just wanted to, for the Q&A, for those that are here locally for the Q&A section, those that want to ask questions, can you please just raise your hands so that that there is an opportunity to figure out who and what questions are asked, just so that we're not too repetitive of the themes, and then we will proceed with the Q&A locally. First question to come this evening from Twitter comes from Flutsuke, and the question is, how will you implement Treaty 8 and Treaty 11 / honor the treaties, which also ties back to number 2 of our question. So I will just add the broader theme to it of a number of unfinished land claim negotiations are long overdue for the completion in the territory. So what should the territorial government do to support the completion of unsettled land claims in the territory? First, and we will try the 2-and-2 format for the Q&A section. Starting with Yellowknife North, beginning with Dan Wong, please.
Okay, thank you, Amos. So, you know, I think to answer this question on land claims, let's look at the Dene Nahjo model. And the Dene Nahjo National Park Reserve, what it really did was took years of negotiations and compressed it into several months. And I think it shows us how we can do things differently. And I think Roy Erasmus did really well on this question last night when he explained how in Dene Nahjo the political leaders really took control of the process away from the negotiators. The negotiations were at a standstill, as they often are, and what happened was the leaders were all invited to come together. Coffee was brewed at the ledge, and you know, they really put everything on the table at a nation-to-nation level, and then the politicians followed up basically as an on-call basis, and they provided rapid direction and redirection to these negotiating tables. If you compare that with the old federal model, with meetings once a month or occasionally between months, you know, there's frankly not a lot of incentive at times for negotiators to get these agreements done. I think that's true on both sides, and so I do think that because this Dene Nahjo model has worked so successfully, as well with recent trans-boundary water agreements, it does give us hope that we can get these claims settled in the Dehcho and the Akacho. There's also optimism with the new federal government as well. But as an MLA, I do have a priority, the fair settlement of Aboriginal rights, which, as we know here, really about treaty rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Corey is up next, please.
Thank you. Well, and first, I recognize that land claims are not just about getting your hands on land. I know that we all recognize that. I understand that these settlements will help to build self-reliance and will bring back support of traditional culture, language, and education, as well as support and sustain prosperous future for many generations to come. The GNWT should do anything that it is required, anything it can help to complete unfinished land claim negotiations in the NWT. The GNWT should spend some money to resolve and fast-track negotiations where it can, because no one wins without these land claims not being settled, or without them being settled. We know this is a federal responsibility, and the GNWT should hold the feds to account. There is a new government of Canada. We've got to press the feds to act. Far too much money has been spent on these negotiations for too little progress that has been made. We all need certainty, and these processes need to be finalized in order to provide that certainty. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Edwin, please.
Thank you. There's 2 unsettled claims right now, that the Dehcho and the Akacho, and we certainly need to consider these a priority to be settled. The GNWT needs to advocate for the expedient settlement of these land claims, using common ground, of course, and respect. We've got to fast track these discussions with the federal government and Aboriginal governments in a spirit of openness and transparency and sharing. There's no hidden agendas, basically. This will put Aboriginal governments more in control of their own destinies and will allow for better options of economic development and land-based planning for all communities currently involved in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. Sean, please.
I don't really know if if the Akacho and the Dehcho really should or even have to do a modern-day treaty. with the feds and the GMT, because I believe the treaties are similar to the documents signed between the English Crown and the Scottish, and also I believe the Irish, and they have control of their lands, so there is a precedent set there, and we live in that kind of world nowadays. So, having said that, I believe the GNMT can certainly lift the sanctions off the Aboriginal governments. I mean, on one hand, you're negotiating with them, and then you're putting sanctions on them. You're putting people in jail for collecting firewood and stuff like that, and that's what they're doing. I mean, so and for gathering wood and selling their fish. So I think that's got to stop, for one thing, before it goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And Ben, please.
Thank you. This is probably one of the most important questions that face us today. Land claims negotiations, treaty relationships, both with First Nation groups, with the Métis, with the Inuvialuit, and the Northwest Territories, really has a history of divide and conquer. If you divide it up into small segments, you can force people into a corner so that they essentially agree to less than what they should be getting on the table. So this reference from Sean to modern treaties is very much part and parcel that should be considered. For me, the quick question to this is get out of the way. The GNWT needs to get out of the way and back their constituents. They should not be running interference at all on land claims at all. This is a nation-to-nation relationship, and the GNWT needs to get out of the way so that these land claims can be settled. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. The next riding we're going to ask this question of is the Tunin Day Willade, beginning with Tom Bolio.
Thank you. I feel that there will be a slight change from the way Thought and Nanana was settled. However, I think that is a good model. We were actively engaged in the negotiations. It's not finalized yet, but we were actively engaged as a government. I think that the mandate should be tied closer to the negotiators. Right now, there is a bit of a distance between the negotiators and the mandate. So it takes a bit of time in order to get the word out on the mandate to the negotiators, and then it comes back and forth, and it is a bit of a tedious process. We're hopeful, though, with the new federal government that there should be a new approach, and I will have to assume that it'll be a better approach than what we have been doing so far. And with the GNWT and the two Aboriginal governments who have been going on for a long time, I think 27 years in Acacho and 45 years in Adetcho, hopefully we can bring this land claim on both of those Aboriginal governments to a conclusion within the next 4 years.
Thank you. Richard Ajericon.
Thank you for that question. I just want to say that back in 1900, July 25th, Chief Dragis and Oliver Ajericon also signed a treaty. It's been exactly 100 years later, in 2000, Ford Resolution, I signed the Acacho Framework Agreement that laid out 36 chapters as to how we're going to negotiate. It's 15 years later, and it's actually 115 years now that we haven't finished that land claim, yet the mandate is really far. I mean, how long we're going to continue to negotiate? I think it's time to put that down. Let's put it to rest. And that's what the Chiefs want. They want to settle that land claim, period. And I think it's time that we do that. And, you know, as a MLA, I want to work with the Aboriginal governments. I want to make sure we get these land claims done. I want to take my direction from the Chief and Council, main table negotiations. And I want to work with government to get those things done. I seen it, I've been there, I've seen it, I experienced it. But it has to be good faith negotiations. And I haven't seen it. Now that there's a will here to get this thing resolved, we got a new Liberal government, and now we're at the table here just running for elections to get these things done. But 115 years is a little bit too long for me. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to open it up to questions from the floor. We have someone waiting here. I'm just going to instruct people to introduce themselves, direct questions, say if you're going to direct questions to a specific riding or to all candidates, and to try to keep your preamble short and ensure that there's a question there and that things stay very respectful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Chris Podiak. I'm Regional Vice President for North Great Slave for the Union of Northern Workers. I represent approximately 1,300 unionized workers here in Yellowknife. I am a resident of the Yellowknife North riding, so I would like to direct this question to them. GNWT and its workers will soon be negotiating a new contract. I would like to know from the candidates what they feel the priorities are with regards to negotiating this contract with their workers. What is the most important issues that this government faces with regards to negotiating a new contract with its workers? And if they feel that it's within their realm to live up to the government's goals of attracting 2,000 new residents here in the territory here in the next few years. I feel that a solid contract with its employees will probably be a step in that in the right direction in attracting people to the north and retaining them. Can you please identify what your priorities are? Thank you.
The Yellowknife North. Can we get Corey to begin that question, please?
Thank you, Chris. And first off, I'll recognize Chris as a neighbor in the riding of Yellowknife North, and I appreciate you giving me the question. Two components that I have with regard to my experience with unions is one, that I was a former steel worker with while working at Con Mine. I was also a former GNWT employee while working at the Housing Corporation. As a city councillor, I gave approval to move forward on mandates that all were approved through good faith negotiations. I certainly recognize and appreciate all the efforts and aspects that union bring to protecting workers, especially as it relates to the achievements they've made in health and safety, and I certainly want to see those things continue. We attract a lot to, one of the ways we attract people to the north to stay and live is because we have good prosperous jobs and we have good security. We have lots of opportunity. And I want to see that continue. I think if as an MLA you're going to be responsible for oversight to some degree for up to 4,500 employees, it would be my responsibility to get to know the collective bargaining agreement inside and out and make sure that we are dealing in good faith as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Sean Erasmus, please.
Well, thank you for the question. Bringing in 2,000 people, that's a pretty good goal. I guess they didn't get started on that yet, eh? So we got a lot of work to do, but yeah, bargaining in good faith sounds good. I kind of agree with that, that's for sure. I did get your email. I didn't get a chance to answer those questions yet, and I will get to that though. And I'll go from there, I guess, and I'll let them take the floor.
Okay, this is Sean. Mr. Nin, please.
Thank you. The government of Northwest Territories is only as good as the people who are hired by the government of Northwest Territories. So if you treat those individuals badly, what does that do for morale? What does that do for retention? So as an MLA, this is what I would say. Bargain in good faith, bargain so that you're going to retain the programs and the people who are there now, and give them fair wage. keep the integrity of the system that we have now. What we don't want to do is lose anybody, and we don't, because that's going to send a message right throughout the whole of the Northwest Territories and beyond about, number one, keeping people here, and number two, keeping effective government going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Edwin, please.
Thanks for the question, Chris. Number one issues for me, of course, are the cost of living in terms of the negotiations. We need to make sure that the increments that are negotiated reflect whatever it is the costs that we have up here in the north. Secondly, in terms of health and safety for our workers, that's got to be a primary consideration. Our people are the most important resource here in the north, and we need to make sure that they're protected. We also need to be able to ensure that the education and the recruitment and retention of these people are always a priority, and to ensure that the benefits that are in place right now are not diminished. For overall people, we need to also pursue the federal government.
Can we? Mr. Castillo, we'll let you finish your statement.
We need to pursue what the federal government's promises in terms of the northern deductions increase as it relates to our cost of living. Thank you very much.
And Dan Wong with the final word.
Thanks for your question, Chris. As the former president of Local 1, the biggest local under the UNW umbrella, I think you know where I stand here, but I'll tell you anyway. Number one priority is fair bargaining. That's going to be the number one issue. Second priority, and you know, these priorities actually, they aren't ranked, but anti-bullying and anti-harassment. Unfortunately, this is still an issue. It's 2015, but it is still an issue here. Third issue, mental health in the workplace. It's a problem everywhere in Canada. It's a problem here in Yellowknife. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. We are going to go to the question from the floor. I saw both Mark Bogan and Lydia Bardak. Mr. Bogan, we're going to try to do our best to give people who haven't had a chance to ask questions yet that opportunity. Ms. Lydia Bardak, please.
Thank you very much. And so my question is to the candidates from Yellowknife Centre. However, I'll leave it to the moderators if it should also go to Dene Nahjo, because it was asked earlier today. It is regarding justice and corrections. The question, to remind you, was Indigenous people continue to be dramatically overrepresented in Canadian jails. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Office of the Federal Correctional Investigator note that legislation meant to help establish Aboriginal healing lodges and community-centered healing is not being utilized. Culturally relevant programming is often unavailable, and communities are disconnected from the criminal justice systems. If elected, what steps can you take to reduce the overrepresentation of Aboriginal people in jail and improve the relationship between Aboriginal people and the criminal justice system?
Thank you for that question. So we're going to start off with the Yellowknife Centre, and we have Robert Hawkins going first.
Thanks very much for the question, Lydia. I guess first off, I want to say I fully support the Truth and Reconciliation actions and priorities, because I think if we want to start doing it right, let's just start doing it right. And you know, I make no bones about it. We got to get to work on those and implement them. The next thing is we have a new government in Ottawa, and let's not miss the opportunity that the tough on crime agenda needs to be repealed, and hopefully the new Trudeau government will realize that that was not the way to go. We have to work with people, and we have to find alternative solutions. Jails are not the solutions for every particular case. I'm not going to spend all night talking about the differences. Experts out there can, but I can tell you we need to ask ourselves, are we going about this right way? I certainly and have always supported wellness courts. I think it's certainly the right way to look at situations, and we have to decide on what's appropriate at the right time, and we have skilled people to do that. I fought for our Aboriginal program in our jails because people are not getting the cultural support that they need, and they certainly want. Now, some of the solutions that I'll fight harder for is that, frankly, I'll fight for more housing. Housing is so important. housing first policies will tell you that when you start putting in people in better housing, all of a sudden the other problems start to shrink. They're not going to the hospitals as often, they're not using the jail system as often. I mean, it's just an amazing positive ripple effect. So that's where we're going to start. We have to ask ourselves, what can we do? We should be starting with things like housing and treatment programs, addiction programs. It just doesn't stop. We got to get behind it. I've got the enthusiasm. I'll make sure we work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Green, please.
Yes, I agree with Robert here that housing first and addressing the systemic issues that have created the problems is a really important approach. So people who are overrepresented in jail usually have come from poverty. They lack housing, education, employment, and treatment for their addictions and mental health issues. So if those issues, those systemic issues were addressed, I really believe that there would be fewer people who were housed in jail, and that often happens as a last resort. I had a really interesting conversation with a man on his doorstep last night about how the jails were filled because the remand to jail is happening more often, and that people are waiting longer for trials. And he felt that it was really important to pay more attention to the presumption of innocence, which would enable people who are accused of nonviolent crimes to be released on their own recognizance until they came to trial. So I think that that's something that we really need to look at in order to address the number of people who are sitting in jail now, not to anyone's benefit.
Thank you to the candidates from Yellowknife Center. I'm gonna, in the interest of time, gonna proceed to another question because I know that Mr. Engie wanted to ask something from the floor.
Yes. Okay, I think I got it here. Yes. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bill Inge, and I am the president of the North Slave Métis Alliance. I've had that privilege to be the president for 11 consecutive years today. So I don't know how auspicious that is, but nonetheless, it's the fact. The North Slave Métis Alliance fought the government of the Northwest Territories in court for 5 years under the auspices of Premier Bob McLeod's leadership. We had to take the government of the Northwest Territories to court to win our right to harvest caribou on our traditional lands that we've occupied here for 200 years. And I think the need here right off the bat is to correct a couple of misnomers. Firstly, there's not 2 land claims underway in the Northwest Territories, there's actually 3. Treaties are not the only form of Aboriginal rights. Métis have Aboriginal rights under the auspices of Section 35 of our Constitution Act. Right now, there's a land claim underway in the Northwest Territories for Métis, and it's the only place in Canada where the Métis are negotiating a land claim, so-called Métis. Now, we beat the government of the Northwest Territories in court, so to speak. We won our case. After we won our case, the government of the Northwest Territories still refused to provide the North Slave Métis Alliance with harvesting cards.
I'm going to have to ask you to come to a question.
Okay, I'm going to get there. Okay, now, we find ourselves in court again. The North Slave Métis Alliance is back in court again against the government of the Northwest Territories, this time for supporting a land claim being negotiated by the Northwest Territories Métis Nation. The government of the Northwest Territories is signatory to that land claim, and it is to the detriment of the North Slave Métis people because it contemplates the extinguishment of our Aboriginal rights. The North Slave Métis people want reconciliation with this government. Are the candidates up here prepared to support a reconciliation and support the North Slave Métis people's Aboriginal right to exist in the North Slave region and this community of Yellowknife? Thank you.
Thank you. Is that to all the candidates?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
We'll begin with Yellowknife South, and we're going to start with, what is it? Bob McLeod.
You knew this was coming.
It was purely random.
Let's just flip this over. I'll sit back.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding yesterday was when sitting MLAs were in this position, you chose that you wouldn't put us in that situation, and I want to correct Mr. Engie. We're still in court. The Supreme Court judge has indicated that you need a strength of claim that will support setting up a negotiating table with the North Slave Métis Alliance, and that's as far as I'm prepared to discuss, especially since it's before the courts and we're still running the government of the Northwest Territories. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We're going to go to Najitsil.
Thank you, Bill, for your question. I think it's incredibly important. So I think that the Dene and Métis have been incredibly tolerant and forgiving of practices that disrespect this right, these rights and title. We are in a new era, and it is time for reconciliation and restitution, as you're saying. Honoring the treaties is a good place to start, but also I think that it's really important what you've said about how the territorial government really needs to come to negotiations with respect for these rights, and with a sincere desire for work with true partnership. Because that's not currently what's been happening. When one government is stymieing another, and you know they're saying that the power is theirs, but you know that's not in true partnership. You know, when there are clear guidelines about land, it opens that up for everyone to have a real opportunity to understand how that land is used. And I think it's about time that we get to some real final solutions on that. So I'm right behind you, Bill.
Thank you. We'll move to Sam Roland.
Okay, I'll make my answer short and sweet just because there's a lot of us here, and I think we're all neighbors. We're all from the territory. We all deserve the respect from each other. We got to work together as a territory and support each other. Bill, I understand the struggle, and you know, it's as a territory we got to work together, and as a territory we got to accept everybody. We got to accept everybody's values, no matter the ethnic group or race. Everybody and treat everybody the same. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Tunede Willade and begin with Richard Ajerikon.
Thank you. I guess when you really take a look at the Canadian Constitution, it's pretty clear, 35(1) and 2. You know, we have rights, Aboriginal rights. And from what I'm hearing from Mr. Engie is that regardless, I mean, we all fall under Section 35(1) and 2. I would say that Gina Batiste should really take a look at as to how we move forward with cases like this. And, you know, we may have to get another new opinion. Because at the end of the day, you know, we all have to live together and work together here. We shouldn't be going to court for caribou or wood, even Métis rights. We all have rights. We got to respect that. As a government, I think the Northwest Territories is going to have to start recognizing that we have Constitution-protected land claim agreements. We have 3 on the table, 2 around the corner. And sooner or later, we're going to have to start talking about new relationships based on coexistence and relationship. And I think it's something we're going to have to start talking about soon. I'm talking about possibly a new constitution based on that. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Bolio.
Thank you. I agree that the Métis have rights. However, I too am a member of cabinet, and I don't know the details of the court. It's not something that has been shared with me. I don't know which other Aboriginal groups are involved in the court case, which area the harvesting is intended to cover. If it's intended to cover the Bathurst, then nobody's hunting the Bathurst. If it's intended to move to another area, such as hunting the Beverly Kamyunerik or the Hayek, and that's a different area managed by different Aboriginal groups. So it's very difficult for me to do a proper response other than Métis have rights. That's true. constitutional rights. However, this particular case, I'm not able to respond to it.
Thank you very much. The next to answer will be Yellowknife Center, beginning with Julie Green.
Thanks for the question, Bill. I don't have any quarrel with the fact that Métis have rights. Without knowing the ins and outs of your own case, I just want to observe that where there's the political will, things get done. That's how devolution got done. It was a priority, and somehow all the wheels turned, and it happened. And so there is a way to get these things done, and they need to be done for your sake. They also need to be done so that it provides certainty. You know what you have, and everybody else knows what they have in terms of land available for conservation and development. And so I would like to see a high priority to get all the land claims properly resourced so that they are resolved as soon as possible.
Thank you. Robert Hawkins.
Thank you, Bill. First of all, you know I certainly support the assertion of rights of the North Slave Métis, and I just want to make sure that's on the record again. I don't have to explain to you, but the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that Métis have equal rights. I don't have to explain that to you, and I certainly obviously support the Supreme Court of Canada. I'm not in a place to disagree with them. I want to tell you, I marched at Idle No More because I believe in Aboriginal rights and them asserting, you know, the responsibilities, the governance, and certainly the respect that they deserve, and I stand with them. And as a matter of fact, I sprung my son out of school because I needed to know, needed to see, he needs to understand how important these things are. Bill, really at the end of the day, this is about a relationship, and as the old saying goes, you know, it's about respect, fairness, and partnership. So if you're not part of the solution, get the heck out of the way. I believe that this is something that we have to look at. I don't know the details of the court case, and frankly, I don't know if I need to know the details of the court case. But as a politician, what you need to hear is this. I will support the fact that you need fair negotiations, and I think that's the answer you're looking for. And I think that just broadly speaking is there's no reason why we can't work harder to solve some of these land claim agreements. We've seen the success in the Toledo region. You know, we've seen it in the Sawtooth when people are getting together, solving these land claim issues, getting their people to work. I mean, it's exciting watching young people work, elders taken care of, people are putting food on their tables. There's great opportunities. Why should we deny you that opportunity? I see no reason why. So I'm behind getting back to the table in a fair, respectful way. We also have people who need to do their jobs, but we have to respect people. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, we're going to Yellowknife North and starting with Dan Wong.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I don't know anything about your court case, so I'm not going to speak to that. But you've heard my thoughts on land claims and what I believe is a workable model. Do I support Métis rights? Yes, I do. Do I support treaty rights? Yes, I do. I guess the last thing I'll say is, yeah, we do need to move forward with reconciliation, and I think in many different ways, and maintaining the honor of the Crown. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey Van Thyn.
Thank you, and thank you for raising the point, Bill. Very important one. Most certainly, you know, to some degree, I still see this as we have in many facets of dealing with issues in the territory, as this us versus them conundrum that we're continually having to deal with. We got to get back to finding ways and putting all of us collectively, people first. And so certainly as it relates to honoring the Section 35 of the Charter, I respect and appreciate the Métis' rights to negotiate and advance their land claims, and I'd be in full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Sean Erasmus next, please.
As soon as I saw you, I knew your question. Pretty much, eh? Yeah, I saw you writing away feverishly there. I love Métis people. They do have rights too, but unfortunately, I kind of have to back away from that because I'm in a cage of Dene ban, and I believe that it's traditionally their land, so it's kind of overlapped, or you're right in there. So people are saying your group is from Manitoba, and that is before the courts too, and all that. And so, whoa, it's a bit much, I think. But I mean, something's got to be done, of course. But I don't know what. So I'm going to leave it up to the courts, and I'm going to go to the bathroom. I've had to go for about half an hour now.
Thanks very much. Next response will be from Ben Nind.
Thank you, Bill, for the question. I like how you took the front seat, because I knew that that was coming. As I said, and really was directed both to the land claim process, but also the spirit in which the GNWT has run interference. And I believe they've run interference on this. They may think they have just cause, but I think going to court is an extreme way of going to of being able to settle issues such as this with constituents. My recommendation is back your constituents to the best of your ability and make it work. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Edwin Castillo.
Thank you, Bill, for the question. Of course, I recognize and support your rights as well as all of the other Aboriginal rights. From what I see, like, we need to involve all stakeholders in the process. I don't know too much about your court case either, but I believe that we need to undertake a comprehensive consultation with all the groups, you know, just to ensure that any of the impacts are assessed properly. What are the impacts on the others, for example? As Richard had alluded to, everybody else has rights, of course. So I'd say I do believe that you do have rights, so I can commit then again to a consultation process. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Engie. I'd just like to acknowledge that it's important to have a question regarding rights, Métis rights, Indigenous rights in general. However, it's not our intention tonight to put current sitting MLAs on the spots for questions that are particularly difficult for them to answer while still in office. So with that, I'd like to apologize to Mr. McLeod. At this point, we are near the end of the evening. We have about 20 minutes left. And so we are going to prepare for the final statements from our candidates. Yes, Mr. Engie.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out that it was, the question I asked was not designed
it's
to put,
okay.
But the thing is, what I want to point out is the caribou harvesting case is over. So we are no longer in court on that matter. And so I believe that Premier McLeod can answer the question regarding caribou harvesting, but not so for the NWT Métis Nation AIP. Right. But there's no question that the caribou harvesting case is finished. We won. And we have a kind of agreement. Thank you.
Okay. Do you feel a response is needed?
Well, he's changing his questioning now to caribou instead of the AIP, but I won't advance that argument anymore. Thank you.
That's my best attempt at moderating that situation. However, I would still like to move on to the final statements. So the format for the final statements are 1 minute for each candidate. We are going to pick at random again, and that will begin with Yellowknife North. That was kind of fun. So we begin with the Yellowknife North, please. Where did my paper go? 1, 2, 3, 4. Where's number 4? Oh, under my phone. Sorry about that. Mr. Edwin Castillo, please.
Thank you. So over the past few weeks and this little while here, we've heard a lot of ambitious priorities, social, economic, environmental, political, that presents serious challenges to the 18th Assembly in view of the fiscal reality before us. I believe that I have the experience based on living here throughout my life and living the challenges, and also the professional capacity as a professional accountant to ensure that checks and balances, proper controls are in place, that are results-driven, evidence-based to maximize on efficiency and effectiveness of the decisions that are made. Like you, I want to ensure that our children, our next generation, are not going to be saddled with a debt that they can't get rid of. I base this on an inclusive framework of affordability, balance, and positive change. Thank you.
Dan Wong, please.
Merci, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight, and thanks also to my fellow candidates, to Corey, Ben, Edwin, to Sean, and thank you to Dene Nahjo for pulling this thing off so well. And while I'm sure that any of the candidates here would make good MLAs, I'd get you to ask yourself, what are your interests? What are your priorities, and what matters to you most? My priorities and my plan are about building a healthy community by fighting mental health and addictions, not people with mental health and addictions. My priorities are about housing first. My priorities are about creating clean, affordable power, not just for the grid as a whole, but also for your home. And my priorities are about sustaining our economy, not just through responsible mining, but an economy that puts people first by creating good, quality, local jobs. I'll need your support on November 23rd. Thank you.
Sean Erasmus, please.
It almost sounded like he stole my closing remarks.
You left them there.
Yeah. Anyways, I didn't even think of one. On the 23rd, yeah, I'm going to need your vote too if I'm to keep my goals. I want to start up my business, so I could use some help for that for sure. And I have some good ideas for people to save some money, and that'll help too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Corey Vanthine?
Thank you, and thank you for everyone being here this evening, and to Dene Nahjo for hosting it. Very grateful for being here. Residents have told me, focus on what Northerners have in common rather than what divides us. I will listen to good ideas from anyone and everyone, not just from within certain circles or from particular individual, organization, or industry. No one person, group, or business has all the best ideas. Collectively, through varying ideology, thoughts, and opinions, we create community. Respecting that and having an open mind is what you will receive from me as your MLA for Yellowknife North. I believe, as many do, that the current territorial government has focused too much on what is happening in the short term. We need to focus on the long-term attention and planning for a sustainable future. Now is the time to provide the best services possible to our residents, but also promote our globally valued resources, protect our pristine environment, and preserve the quality of life that our children expect. My focus will remain on people, environmental stewardship, building a strong economy,
Corey.
and being fiscally responsible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ben Nind, please.
I'd like to thank the organizers for this and for all of you coming out and showing great interest and activation. Money is a tool, and money does not have to be an end unto itself. If you govern on the basis of the bottom line, you lose the power for vision to lead. And I think we have to reprioritize that. Vision needs to lead this. Vision that comes from your heart, your hands, and your head. So my platform is about that. It's about a healthy environment. It's about a solid identity of who we are. It's about wellness in body and spirit. It's about educating from the land right through to the new world of new technologies. It's about an economy that is diverse and sustainable, and a governance that is strong and transparent. That's what I'm putting forward, and that's what I'm looking forward to. Thank you.
Moving on to Yellowknife Center, we're going to begin with Julie Green.
Thanks very much. I appreciate everyone coming. You're looking a little weary now, but we're just about done. I'm inviting people to vote for change this election. I feel that I have the experience on boards, on multi-stakeholder processes to bring people together and work for common solutions. I promise to put my constituents first, to treat them all equally, to provide newsletters, to have constituency meetings, and to provide an open style of communication. I represent an alternative that will serve you well in the Legislative Assembly, with my record of smart and practical solutions on a variety of issues, especially issues that have plagued the downtown. We've talked about systemic problems with housing, poverty, food security, safety, and so on. We need to bring all orders of government together, all the stakeholders together, to develop a plan and start working through the issues that are dragging us down. So I would invite you to vote for me on November the 23rd.
Thank you very much. Robert Hawkins, please.
Mussy to Dene Nahjo, and certainly the folks that have stuck it out here tonight. This election, in the view of many, they've told me that this is a choice election. You can vote for experience and choose someone who knows the issues and has a history of getting results, or you can consider another option without that particular background. For the past 3 terms, I've certainly been a relentless advocate for Northern families, and as the times change, it becomes more critical than ever to have someone who understands these changes, who's progressive and at the same time has worked on these things. As an MLA, I have the reputation of being a very successful constituency person, working with our community time after time. I've worked hard to build partnerships, and I'll continue to do so. I support the traditional economy, small business, and I believe in respect, fairness, and partnership. I've got the energy and enthusiasm, and certainly the ideas, and even my critics can't say I don't have energy, enthusiasm, and ideas. And I can tell you, with me, you'll get more of that every single day, because I work very hard, and I'll tell you, I never give up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to Yellowknife
Unless I have
South. We're going to begin with Nahjo Norbert.
Thank you to Dene Nahjo for hosting such an important forum. I was incredibly excited to come tonight and have this open dialogue, and I hope to move forward with those open doors, with ideas of accountability, transparency, community at the heart of what I am doing here. I see this as an act of resistance and an uprising, and I hope that I inspire people around me to also take up the torch in that area and act now with me to create real change as we go forward. Some of my important issues are conservation and environmental stewardship, housing first, education, clean energy options, sustainable economy model that focuses on diversification, sustainable energies, and a return to Indigenous values and continuation of decolonization of the system. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak tonight. I really enjoyed myself.
Thank you very much. Sam Rowland, please.
All right, and thank you to Dene Nahjo for inviting us, and all you who have come out and sat out through this lengthy process. This election is actually about you. It's not about us, it's about you. You have the right to vote, and you have the right to make change. We have to work together as a territory to build the beautiful future we all see. We have to work together, and you have, as a resident of the territory, have to work together and give yourself the power to make change. Give yourself the power to see where you want to see the future of the territory go. We as a territory are going to see difficult challenges ahead of us. Financial, economy, we're going to see it. You got to vote in a team that is going to get you through it, not the team that put you there. You got to vote for change, and you got to vote for the beautiful territory we see. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob McLeod.
Thank you. I want to thank Dene Nahjo for organizing this forum tonight. I've lived in Yellowknife South for 27 years. People want to know that prosperity, jobs, and property values are secure for the long term. I want that too, for my family, for my neighbors in Yellowknife South, and for everyone in the Northwest Territories. It has been a pleasure to serve the people of Yellowknife South for 8 years, and the Northwest Territories as Premier for the past 4 years. We have accomplished a great deal over the past term. Looking to the future, there are still many challenges to overcome in the 18th Assembly, and we need to get to solutions quickly. I want to put my experience, commitment, and leadership back to work for Yellowknife South constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For Tunede Willade, we're going to start with Tom Bolio.
Thank you. I feel that I have served on cabinet for 4 years. I served as a Minister of Health and Social Services. I thought did a lot of good work in 2 years that I was there. I became the Minister of Infrastructure, essentially with Public Works and Transportation. I went after infrastructure money from the federal government. It's 75% funded by the federal government. All communities wanted it to create jobs. All communities wanted to develop their economy. They wanted to lower unemployment. They want to increase employment rates. They want to decrease cost of living. They want to deal with mental health and addictions. And one of the ones that I really enjoy working on is early childhood development. I think that has the biggest returns, so I'll continue to do that if elected. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom. And the last word will go to Richard Ajericon.
Masi. Sini kuya cha meeting na class ni tu. Hatale November 23rd ex hale for Trinity Willie Day. One of the reasons why I'm running is because I want to start being the voice for the Aboriginal people. Give the voice back to the Chief and Council, Elders, Advisor Council, main table negotiations. My first priority is to settle the outstanding land claims in our territory. The other things we want to talk about is the inquiry into a murdered and missing Aboriginal woman. I think that's something that needs to be done, and even though this government, we need to go down the road and get it done. The Bathurst Caribou herd, again, I think there needs to be a transboundary agreement between the government, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. Regardless what happens, the caribou crosses the border, big game hunters shoot it. But here in Northwest Territories, there's a ban. So I'm saying that it's time. I think it's time now that we need change. I think we need to look for new vision for the Northwest Territories. And I'm asking for your vote on November 23rd. Thank you.
And at this point, that concludes the first ever Dene Nahjo Yellowknife Election Forum. And on behalf of Dene Nahjo, I'd like to say thank you, Masi Cho, to all the candidates for participating in this forum. To the candidates, thank you for your diversity of viewpoints and ideas. And you should all be commended for putting your names forth for public office. I would also like to thank our timekeeper, Mandy McDonald. Iris Catholic for coordinating and organizing tonight. Eugene Belanger for managing the Dene Nahjo Twitter feed and the live streaming service provided. To the Yellowknives Dene drummers for starting us off right. Pito for the excellent sound. And also to the audience, thank you for your participation both in person and online. Masi Cho, everybody. Oh, and to my co-moderator, Megan, thanks for rocking it. And lastly, best of luck to all the candidates in their campaign.